Hello and welcome to another really fascinating episode of the Fully Charged Show podcast. So excited to get this particular guest on the show. Occasionally you meet people. I mean, I've only met today's guest virtually, but you meet people whose achievements are so incredible that you just feel hugely inadequate. I mean, for instance, today's guest has won the Australian Free Diving Championship while diving for the work she does. And if you don't know what free diving is and you're not good at swimming, don't Google it. It basically means going really deep underwater and holding your breath for like a ridiculous amount of time. Anyway, that's nothing. That was just a little aside. In 2016, today's guest flew 7,000 kilometers across 11 countries in a paramotor. Now, if you don't know what a paramotor is, have a Google of that, but we'll explain it in the conversation. And she was tracking migrating Berwick swans from the Russian Arctic to the UK. They actually land and nest about 30 miles from where I live, but they come all the way from Arctic Russia. Amazing. So, Sacha Dench is an incredible woman. Later this year, she's going to be flying around the British Isles in an electrically powered paramotor to raise awareness about, the damage we're doing to the environment, to the marine ecosystem in particular. And she's flying around the coast of the British Isles in her electric paramotor, just leading up to COP26. And then she's going to fly with some other migrating birds from the UK that are heading back south down to sub-Saharan Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, that area. Amazing achievements, and she's a fascinating woman to talk to. So Sacha Dench is this week's wonderful guest, and here she is on the Fully Charged Plus podcast. My Energy is putting the I back into British innovation. My Energy is putting the I back into inventing the future. My Energy is putting the I back into inspiring a nation. Recharging the world with green, smart energy. Charge your EV with your PV and more. Visit myenergy.com and help to spark the green revolution. My Energy, driving the charge to a greener future. Sacha, thank you so much for joining us, because this is so exciting for me, because it's proper serendipity. Because I hadn't heard of what you've done, but as soon as I had heard what you did, I went, oh my God, that is absolutely amazing. I mean, it is an incredible achievement. We don't have to talk about that alone, but I would love to start off with that and how you reached that point where you decided to do that. So I'm going to say what I understand briefly, that you followed a group of swans that migrate from Siberia to the UK, to the British Isles every year, and you followed them in a powered paraglider.
Indeed, yes.
Which is just, I mean, that's so insane. Just because if you'd followed them from, the Netherlands to somewhere in the British Isles, I would be impressed. But you went from Siberia. I mean, so you've got to explain how that, not so much, well, yes, how that came about, but how the flying and that whole thing. I mean, because I've been up in microlights, two-seater microlights, and I quite enjoyed it, but there were moments where it was absolutely bloody terrifying. And I wasn't flying them. I was just sitting there going, ah! And that felt like it had more solidity and control than a curved bit of cloth above your head.
Yes. Oh, wow. You've opened so many potentials to talk about there. So where do we start from? So yes, following swans from the Russian Arctic to the UK, that does look like a ridiculous distance. And you're right, a paraglider or paramotor, which is essentially hanging off a big handkerchief with a fan on your back. Like, that is not a form of air travel that was designed for international journeys.
Yeah.
But there were a few things I see. Firstly, I'm driven by a problem that I really want to solve, where I can see a solution for it. And I looked at the issue of the swans. I was asked to help figure out how we solve all the different problems for the swans along a flyway, and there were different issues in different countries. And I realized the key thing that we needed was to attract people to the story, and the idea of lots of them dying and like lots of them being killed by different things, from shooting to power lines to changes in farming to loss of wetlands for industry. All they were so miserable. But the amazing thing that I thought everyone wanted to hear was the story of that incredible journey. Yeah. And it wasn't until I looked at the map that I thought, oh my God, that's from the land of like polar bears and nomadic reindeer herders back to the UK. That's an incredible story. We need to bring that one to life. And then, I'd thought of different ways. And then I realized this little thing I was flying to take aerial pictures of wetlands, you're very much like a swan in a lot of different ways. You are very exposed to the weather, but you can stop and land anywhere.
Quite easily, yeah.
People. And yes, and the flight looked ridiculous. I mean, many people, even kind of contacts at RAF said, oh, no, I'll help you on logistics, but not on something this ridiculous.
Right.
But I just couldn't help looking at it and thinking, if you break it down into really small journeys, they actually all look doable. It's just when you try and look at the whole thing in one, then it becomes overwhelming and not possible. And I left on this journey knowing there were lots of things that I didn't quite have in place. My to-do list was probably 2/3 done. But I got to the point where I realized that we wanted to do something that was kind of so universal. Who wasn't going to help us with the swans? That I'm pretty sure people will step in and help. So I felt a bit like a stage diver when I first took off in Russia. I was like stage diving and knowing that I'm pretty sure people are going to step in and help if it all goes wrong.
Right. And it sounds like, well, they did, as you've told me. Yeah.
I'm here.
So then I would assume, and I'm sure I'm very happy to be corrected, that your flight speed could be similar to that of a swan in a machine like that. Is that the case? Or, I mean, can they fly faster than you could fly, or they generally went at about the speed you could go at?
Yeah, so you can fly at similar speeds to the swans. The variability in your speed in a paramotor is a lot to do with your wing, not the kind of the size of the motor you've got on the back. So the smaller wing, the heavier you are. Basically, the faster the wing would fall naturally, the faster you could fly.
Right.
The propeller behind you keeps you flying steady. So the smaller the wing, the bigger the motor you need to stay constant.
Yeah.
So there's lots of variables there, but you can fly at the similar speed to the swans. However, I wasn't trying to fly in formation with birds.
Right.
We had collars put on wild birds, and they would fly with their family or with a larger flock, and the migration is spread out over time. So I was tracking them all on a GPS. There were kind of swans and flocks in flight, but I didn't need to be flying next to Charlotte or Daisy Clark or Leho.
Because those are the names of the swans.
Yeah, named after important people, but
Because there was, we did mention it in a previous conversation, but because some listeners may have seen the movie Fly Away Home, which in effect has a similar kind of journey, I suppose, in terms of migratory birds and flying along with migratory birds. But that is very much more, specific to a story where a little girl was there when the eggs hatched of geese, wasn't it?
Yes, they were geese. Were they trying to teach them a migration route? Was that what it was about? I think.
Yeah, I think the idea was that the mother had been shot by hunters, and they found all the eggs, and they hatched the eggs in the barn. And the first time, they came out of the shell, they saw the little girl, so that was Mum, so they followed her. And I've actually seen a documentary, and I've been trying to find it, of how they recreate, because that supposedly happened for real. I think it was based on a true story. Yes, so they had to then train geese to follow the little girl, and they basically recreated it. She was 12 or 13 when they filmed it, and they hatched a load of geese with no mum, and they had to wait in the barn for weeks when no one else was allowed in case the geese saw the sound man with the beard first before he saw them.
Yeah, indeed, and we use that quite a lot in conservation. When we are trying to breed things that need to be wild again, so they can imprint on you as a figure, but they can't imprint on humans. Otherwise, they put themselves too much at threat.
Yeah.
We've done that with other species, but in this case, they were all completely wild birds. Had no particular affinity to me, but we were trying to follow them to learn like what was going wrong, what could we be missing, go to the places that they were going and watch the sort of detailed tracks. And so, obviously the climate is changing. Are they using different sites? But unless you're there at the time, you can't really see what level of threat. So that was the key. And then presumably the key thing was then because you'd be landing regularly, regardless of what the swans were doing. So then but you're in Siberia. It's that first bit of the journey. Once you're in Norway or Denmark, there's loads of people and nice farms and people with Volvos, in the middle of Siberia. I can't really picture it. No, but I'll tell you what, there isn't the nomadic herders, and they are nomadic, however, and at that point, so that was one of the big conversations at the beginning of the expedition, was trying to figure out how I could cross the tundra. What could you, where could you go to if you needed help? How long could it be before someone, got to you? How easily could you navigate? Because there's no roads or runways. Yeah. And I soon realized once you're airborne, you only have to be 500 feet in the air. And if there's a nomadic camp anywhere, you'll see a little thread of smoke in the distance. Right. And even where there's no straight lines in the landscape at all, even in the distance, a little triangle teepee is very obvious, like anything man-made. And with straight lines stands out. So actually it was quite easy to identify where there were going to be people. And where there were hunting huts, sometimes there were people there. Right.
And when you were, because I was just trying to get a picture of what you were actually in, because I've seen paragliders where literally the person is on their feet and they've got the thing strapped to their back and they run along and it goes and that does that. But were you in a seated thing, or were you just sitting on a...
I was it was all foot launch to start with. I snapped.
Oh wow! Right. So when you landed on your feet. You weren't on a 3-wheeled little trike thing.
Not for the first half. I snapped the ligaments in my knee doing on a takeoff with lots of heavy kit on my back. Yeah. And from then on, I had to learn to fly with the trike. So to strap the exact same paramotor, tie it to a 3-wheeled contraption, which was built from bits that we could find in Russia. It was very heavy. Wow. And we tried, it was originally bolted on, and then we realized there wasn't enough flex in the system. So I basically kept chipping the end of the prop, and we couldn't figure out why. And then, my engineer at the time realized that actually there wasn't enough flex in the system. So he removed the bolt and used the spare paraglider line I had. So it was all tied together with string. Beautifully done, but it was just held together with string.
Wow, wow, that is extraordinary. So that I assumed you used a kind of state-of-the-art Swedish light aluminium built for the purpose. It was made bits you found in Russia. It's fantastic. That is extraordinary. Wow, that is absolutely. Wow.
Yeah, I rolled it a lot just to be completely open, and it took a lot of work, and my motor should have been more powerful for something with that weight. Yeah. So and lots of the fields, even where they're farm fields where we were, there were things are plowed with quite rough equipment, so everything was pretty bumpy. Right. So there were lots of rolls,
my goodness.
Lots of it being filmed, lots of it being shared with lots of people. Pretty humiliating is what I thought at the beginning, and then I realised actually the crash has got lots of people interested. So
unfortunately, that is the way it goes, isn't it? Yeah, everybody wants to see that. Yeah. But were there times though when you were, because that was the thing I remember watching the film, the Fly Away Home film. That image of which I've never experienced, of flying along, and there's birds flying next to you.
Yeah,
it's an extraordinary thing. I mean, were there times when you were near birds, even if it wasn't the ones you were tracking?
Yeah. So the first time flying, it was across a piece of the Russian Arctic, and I spent moments like looking at the landscape and going, I had a particular music track for that area as well, trying to basically imprint the whole visual experience with some music so I could play it back later. Wow. Anyway, it was overall magical, and there were big flocks of geese and swans and ducks as well. Basically, they're all doing a similar migration. Wow. And at one point we were flying, there was maybe 100 birds in a flock, and I was watching them kind of thinking, God, that's amazing to be at the same height as them, going at the same speed. I was busy watching them, how the kind of heads stay dead still while the wings are flapping. How does that work? And then 2 birds kind of broke away, and they'd got closer and closer. And I was still busy watching them, and they were flying alongside. At one point I was going, oh my God, this is just amazing, screaming into my radio, hoping somebody would hear maybe. Yeah. In an airline. And then I realized they were getting really close, and they were on a bit of a converging path, and I panicked because Christian Moulek, the guy who has done a lot of imprinting birds and flying with them in a microlight, French guy, he'd said to me he doesn't think they can see the paraglider lines, so don't fly near to them. So I was, just about to pull a really sharp left-hand turn, and these two birds tucked in behind my wingtip. So they lifted up, tucked in behind my wingtip. So clearly they'd figured out that was where they could cruise on the vortices that we were creating.
Wow, isn't that extraordinary?
It was totally magical, and they stayed there for a few minutes. I mean, it was obviously, they were like slipping off it, so it was obviously a bit more turbulent than they'd expect. Big vortices off me, smaller ones off a bird, but they were like using me as another big bird. So that was absolutely magic. Being up there and being considered another flying creature.
Yes. Because I mean, presumably that's the thing. The motor that's driving you is not silent. I mean, it's I'm just thinking from the point of view of the birds. They're hearing. You'd think they would be, I don't know what, scared of the engine sound, but obviously not.
No, I don't think that.
I guess they got used to it.
I don't think they associate it with a threat necessarily.
Yeah.
So you definitely notice a difference in character as the birds get towards countries that are more populated, where there are more people around the wetland sites they stop at, they become more shy. Wow. So they're definitely learning different places. So I don't think they automatically think something is a threat. This was just another big wing kind of flying. Clearly the noise doesn't say to them,
keep away or whatever.
Worry about this.
Yeah. But then, so what you were learning though was what was happening to the swans, because that was a key thing. I remember you saying about that many of the swans had lead pellets in them, or they were suffering from lead poisoning.
There's two different things there. One of them is 1 in 3 birds that we catch in X-ray has been shot at. So they've got shot in their body. That's happening somewhere along the flyway, but it's impossible to tell from the pellets where that has come from. And the second thing is that spent lead shot, when it lands on the ground, is eaten by water birds, especially when it's around wetlands. They think that it's grit or food or something. It's just could be another piece of grain, and that poisons them. And you need to be a bird with a hard gizzard to be able to grind the lead down. I think if we ate lead, it might just go through our system, but the birds particularly, they grind it down, and it kills millions. It kills
Isn't that shocking? Because I live in you live in rural British Isles as well. I mean, I live in an area where a regular sound earlier this year was, which is thousands of people coming out of cities to engage in country sports. Because I'm going to try not to go off on a tangent. I'll keep it brief. But there was the big debate in this country under the last Labour administration about banning hunting, and everybody got all hoo-ha'd about there's a big debate about, which is hunting with dogs to kill foxes. I mean, we live with people who do that around us. They catch a fox once or twice a year. It's nothing. The impact of breeding birds to then let them loose, to then blow them to bits with guns, and then the debris from those guns is monstrous. You could have 1 million horse riding fox hunters to do the same amount of damage as a load of posh boys coming out of London in their Range Rovers with guns. I mean, it's a bit real, because I've had to live with it for so long and kind of tolerate it. I think it's the most loathsome, and it's called a sport. Pathetic men with their stupid guns. Sorry. But and then clearly that's the side of it I'd not even thought about. The shot falls back down on the ground.
So we have now I'd like to think that Flight of the Swans had a big part to do with it. We managed to do a big thing on lead poisoning in Poland, which was one of the last kind of major countries that still allows use of lead around wetlands where all the water birds are feeding. So it was Poland and Ireland, actually. We managed to do quite a lot there in the national media, and Poland actually switched for the last vote. So that's just been made illegal all across European wetlands to use any lead anywhere. So,
because I mean, is there a way of shooting a pheasant without using lead? I mean, are there alternative bullets effectively?
People will tell you that you can't use anything but lead because it's soft. You can only use lead in the old sort of Purdy's and fancy guns, but it's not true. They can all be modified to use it. Denmark banned it 20-something years ago, and they shoot with old English guns, and they have never really had an issue. So there's definitely alternatives. The lead industry would have liked to say that it was essential, but actually the international lead industry came out at the end of last year and said actually it's an embarrassment that lead is being used to spray over the land in ammunition. It should be an embarrassment to us all.
So what is I don't know what the alternative is. What is it? What is in a cartridge now? Steel. So it's little steel pellets.
Yep, steel. Bismuth is another option. It's slightly heavier. There's all sorts of different mixes as well. So hopefully we'll get all lead out of ammunition. It's still used in a lot of bullets, but that could be copper. So yeah, and as technology is going on, alternatives are getting better and better. So now I think they're pretty much even Stevens, even cost.
Right.
There's no real barrier.
Yeah.
Apart from culture.
Yes. I mean, and also I want to say to myself, as well as the listening audience, your activities in the field of gun sports are so much more positive than me having a quiet rant.
Well, I'm
because I've been doing that for years, but it's made no difference whatsoever.
And I guess I always look at things from a population level. So I've lived in a lot of hunting communities, and obviously it's hunting in general, I don't have an issue with in big parts of Russia.
Well, if you're going to eat what you're hunting.
Indeed. So when it comes to a level of lots of non-native species, like a pheasant released en masse into an area, it does become a little bit odd. And that's like you mentioned the difference between Australia and Australia and England. I grew up largely in Australia, where the idea of releasing a lot of invasive, and we would call it invasive, a lot of non-native species for that purpose would have seemed ridiculous. Although I had to go back and look and realize we do it with salmon or trout. I can't remember. We do it with a fish. We do release a fish en masse for sport.
And you release it into wild water, not just in a lake or something, or a contained area.
Yes, into wild water. We do that. So, yes, but I definitely take a very pragmatic approach. And to be honest, the solving potential illegal hunting of swans up in Russia, we've managed to get every single hunting tourist operator in the town nearest to where we started, Naryan-Mar. All the hunting tourist operators are in something called the Swan Champion Network. So a lot of them, we managed to do it in a way where they came to us and said, we just didn't know that was the case state of numbers, showed us brochures where they had, pictures of swans being barbecued over a fire. And we're like, we're really sorry. Like, what can we do to help? So I'll try and go at it in a way that people decide for themselves that they want to help rather than beat them over the head.
Yes. I'm assuming you haven't eaten a swan, but I mean, when they were shooting it, I'm just thinking like in those communities, in sort of very remote communities, they were presumably shooting birds. They weren't posh chaps who'd come out of Moscow in Range Rovers. That's basically what it is. They're shooting them so they can eat them.
So most of them would say they wouldn't intentionally shoot swans. It's sometimes they are flying in mixed flocks with other geese. Right. And I'm guessing sometimes there will be occasions when they are really hungry. There were certainly some communities where they thought the protection on swans was mostly because they are revered in Western sort of fairy tales rather than it being a purely practical. But there are also communities where they have no problem. They have to rely on eating animals because they don't have no agriculture. They have permafrost. So they have no problem with revering an animal, having it as a pet, but then also eating it. So they don't have the same distinction that we have. So they can love swans, have, stories about them. The swans are, in some cases, are considered to take people to the afterlife. But then also eating them. But they are very pragmatic, so they also don't want the species to go down. So they were more interested in the arguments of, are the numbers actually going down? How do you know that? Are other people doing stuff to help? But there is another contingent. So they do get visits from foreign tourists that want to come and shoot birds. And some of those foreign tourists ask to shoot 100 white birds. They basically come up, they'll pay for a helicopter, they'll want to be taken somewhere where they can shoot a mass, and then they want a photograph, they want a selfie of them with a ton of birds laid out in a pattern behind them. And they are as despicable to those communities, but they are also providing some income, which is important for sending their kids to school, getting an education. So we have to kind of work with them to figure out how can we change the system. But it's only through going there and speaking to people that you could possibly have a chance of understanding the nuances of that. Like going out with a massive "Don't Shoot Swans" campaign posters. No,
it's not going to work.
You don't get it that way. And the other thing that you learn from going there is one of the sites I stopped at was the first one where they had a cow. They were very proud of having 6 cows because they could grow a little bit of grass. Right. And at that community, I was dragged into the school, and the headmistress wanted me to speak to all the kids at once. And the first thing I said was, do all the kids know quite a lot about wildlife? And she said, oh, yeah, they all start shooting. Most of them will shoot for their families from the age of 9. They go out in the morning and they shoot. That's their contribution. So I would never have thought, thinking about it from a distance, that we're talking about 9-year-old kids could be the shooters that we want to engage with. So, yes, the nuances of that, all that kind of thing you learn by going with the birds, looking at everything from above.
Yeah. Wow. But then, so eventually you went, when you were going over Europe, so where, I can't quite remember the route, but you did do a bit of Scandinavia.
Yes, so it was basically from Russia across into Poland.
Right, so that a bit further south, so not right up in them.
Yeah, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Germany, Denmark, and then back down into Europe and across the UK.
Yeah,
11 countries.
Wow, amazing. So then when you were, I'm just wondering whether there was more kind of bureaucratic anxiety and control when you were in somewhere like northern Germany or Denmark, and they're going, well, you can't just land in a field.
Yeah.
Do you have to suddenly get permission, or I don't know, how does that work?
Well, yes, there are variations in regulation. So Germany was a country that had a few challenges. One of those is they like to insist that you land and stop and land at airfields,
right.
Which is okay, except it defeats the purpose of what we were trying to do. So I wanted to stop and land and talk to people. And in discussing with the regulators, we realized there was a way around this, in that you can always stop and land in an emergency. And an emergency can be, I need to go to the toilet. So basically, I could stop and land anywhere. And if I was ever asked, the reason was it was a pit stop.
Yeah. That's so perfect. That is fantastic. Yeah. And then, when you got, and where did they fly to? Did they all fly to the same place in the British Isles?
No, they all. So the swans that we had tags on, they all did a slightly different route, and they will choose their own because they're also working around the weather windows. But some of them. And each year, in fact, to be honest, less and less of the birds are going all the way to the UK because they can short stop. They won't necessarily go further if they don't have to.
I see, because the weather is not as cold, so they don't need to go as far south. Oh my God, isn't that extraordinary?
So one year, it was the first year that quite a lot didn't go past Germany. Right. But at the moment, the Netherlands is by far the main stop. So quite a lot of places they can go to there. So most of them ended up in the Netherlands or in the UK.
Right. Wow. And these, I think it's important to point out, these are not the big white swans with long necks that we have in parks in the UK. They're slightly...
With a knob on their head that are called knob swans in every other language in Europe. Mute swans, they're called here, but they're not those. No, they're the migratory swans. They're about half the size, I think. They've got a yellow and black bill, and you're unlikely to be able to get near to them. And at the moment, unless you're going to one of the big sites like Welney in Norfolk or into Slimbridge in Gloucestershire, they're the big sites where you can see.
Oh, so you would be able to see them at Slimbridge? That was one of the questions, because that's not far from me. So I thought I might. Right. Yeah. And they would be there at the moment then, presumably, at this time of year.
Right. And the swans that I flew with, they're going to be there. Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Because do you know if they're still around, some of the ones you flew with? Because what year did you do the flight with? It was 2015.
End of 2016.
End of 2016.
They're living they live into their 20s. So yeah.
Right. Oh, fantastic. Wow.
And I think at Slimbridge, researchers have kind of they've kind of mapped the bill patterns of 10,000 swans. So 10,000 swans have names, and they know their whole life history. So
that's incredible.
How many young they've had, how many partners they have.
Yeah.
Usually it's the same one for their whole life. But Oh,
well, they're monogamous, or technically monogamous, right? If they survive. Very pertinent question for Fully Charged. North Sea wind turbines.
Yeah.
Do they take any swans out that you know of?
Well, one of the reasons that the swan GPS collars were put on swans was working with the power industry to make sure that, basically, to look at the routes that the birds were taking and the variables that were making them do that, and try and situate the turbines away from those specific sites to minimize that. But I don't think we have any records of them hitting it.
Because I'm wondering, I don't know what height would they fly over, say, over the North Sea if they were coming from the Netherlands to the British Isles? Would they be higher? The big wind turbines are so bloody enormous. Yeah.
I'd say generally higher. It's also kind of smoother air higher up as well. So I'd have to go back and check actually what the kind of average height is. But I say generally higher. When they're flying over land, they will be limited by the cloud cover. So in autumn and winter, if the cloud cover is low, quite often they'll be forced to fly low. So a much bigger issue for them is collision with the power lines. Well,
that's what I was going to say, because that's from experience where I grew up in Oxfordshire. There was a big string of pylons about a mile from my home, and I saw, the only time I've ever seen it is dead swans in the middle of a field, right underneath the wires. And you go, that is a swan that was flying along and hit the wires. There wasn't any, I wonder if it was the wires. It was bloody obvious. That's what, I mean, not hundreds, but I definitely saw it more than once as a kid. Yeah. And it was very upsetting because they're big. They're also big when you see them when you're like 12 years old and you see a dead swan at your feet. It's a big creature.
Yeah. And, power lines are one of the major killers. They're one of the major influences. So, and it's interesting that there were lots of people have kind of been trying to analyze why is it that why can't they see the power lines?
Yeah.
And from a human point of view, that was another fascinating thing for me, was to see that when we're flying, I also can't. I mean, if you know exactly where they are and you can focus on them, you do. But when you're in the air and you are looking at the power line against a dark backdrop, which is the land, you do not see it. Yeah. Not only that, your eyes are focused on the land. You're not trained to focus ahead. So as a human being flying, you're actually looking at the pylon and you're guessing where they are.
Right.
Quite a lot. I mean, you can see it once your eyes focus in the right point, but you can't automatically see them.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of an impossible task. The nice thing is there's been plenty of work on different sorts of diverters to put on the lines, and they are an easy way for birds to actually see them. And another challenge for the birds again is in this autumn there were definitely big stretches of Europe where I was flying where we were forced to fly. If I wanted to move at all, I had to fly below the clouds, and that was power line height.
Yeah, right.
So, the weather kind of forces them to be in that range at times. So
then you're like only a couple hundred meters up, if that. I mean, you're low. Yeah, that is low, isn't it? Yeah. Wow. That's it's scary. Yeah, I mean, at least you've got that knowledge of, that there's this string of big metal sticks.
Yeah.
And that means don't go anywhere near them. Whereas a bird wouldn't know that. I mean, they wouldn't hit the actual pylon. They'd see that and work that out, but they might hit the wires. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a very good argument for burying electric cables, really. But I know that's a very complex topic. We don't need to go into that one right now. But then, so I'd love to talk about the kind of the project that you've got lined up for this year, because you did explain to me, but this is one of the advantages of being old and forgetful. I can't remember anything about it. There was something about flying around the British Isles.
Yeah. Yeah, so there was a few things behind that. One of them being, I suppose, coming back from that last swan trip and realizing that whilst we were looking at quite specific issues in different countries, the exacerbating factor in a lot of areas was a change in climate. So, just the less predictable weather patterns put the swans, gave the swans even more of a challenge.
Yeah.
The fact that farmers are having to change what they are growing and where means that the birds that are now like largely reliant on waste crops and things, they have to like change what they do all the time.
Yeah.
Less water in a lot of places, again, that has an impact on the birds. So it was just constantly coming up. And then in January last year, we lost our family home in Australia in the bushfires.
Wow.
So that was another moment of going, okay, I really have to start putting climate front and center. I can talk about things from a bird's eye view. That's my kind of role as an ambassador for the UN's Migratory Species Convention. But climate is there.
Yeah.
And then I had to look at it and go, okay, I'll fly with a petrol powered motor.
Yeah.
Should I need to look at that. Is that something I can have a try? And then with the UK hosting COP26, the climate conference, it just provided a perfect opportunity for me to try it. What can I do with an electric powered paramotor? Yes. Can you fly all the way around Britain? No one's done it in any kind of paramotor at the moment, but can I do it?
I think you can. I mean, I'm absolutely confident you can, but oh my God, it's complicated and difficult and challenging. It's not like, look, we've charged your battery up. You just take off and fly around. No problem. No, I don't. I mean, I don't know. I still don't know enough about it. What my fantasy, this is my fantasy. This won't come off. It's my fantasy is that we'll find you a fleet of electric vehicles that can take turns in following you around the coast. And while they're driving in the hour or so that you've got flight time, they've got 4 battery packs in the back of the car that are charging off the main battery of the vehicle so that when you land, that's the one thing I know. One of the packs, it takes about 4 seconds to refuel it because you unclip a battery pack, you put a new one on, you clip it in and it goes. It's like instant. So, not that you would do that because you'd probably want to rest and a loo break, but that side of it is intriguing, but I don't know what the real flight, and there's so many variants of it. I haven't looked into it, and I've got in touch with two people in the United States, one of whom I know has built a very high-powered, back-mounted paraglider electric motor. So it's like 150 horsepower. It's hugely powerful.
And the weight of it?
And it's very light. It's lighter than it's much lighter than the equivalent. If you had a 250 horsepower combustion engine, that would be big.
That's a lot, yeah.
Big. That's a car. That's a big car engine, So, and they've done that as a test to see how powerful they can do it and all that stuff. But if you have the one bit of that I've discussed, this is long before I heard about you or met you, is that you can have an overly powered electric motor that drives the fan, but you don't turn it up full. And therefore it's much more energy efficient because it's not straining. It's not like at the absolute limit of its abilities to spin the prop. But I mean, that's as much as my knowledge is going. But the idea of that is that it will give you you're running a motor at quite low energy consumption. So then it would last longer and you'd be able to go further. But the great thing about it is if you need it, you can go and it will. I mean, there's some amazing, I don't know if you've seen it, the footage of guys testing them out and they're standing, they haven't got a paraglider, they've just got the motor on their back and he's standing still. And as he turns it up, he bends forward because the pressure is so intense that it would just push him over and he'd fall over. So he's then like straining against it and it's actually pushing him into the ground. But when you hear that noise, it's such a weird noise because it's not like a petrol one. So it's going.
The propeller,
Yeah. So all you can hear is the propeller, and then it goes, and when it goes high, you go, "Oh my God, that's going!" The props are going so fast. That was 6 small props, 6 motors on a structure. But wouldn't it be exciting? I mean, it would just make such an amazing show. That's what I want. I want to film it. We don't have the budget, we don't have the time, we don't have the manpower or the vehicles, but I'm quite good at blagging stuff. So I'm on full blag to see if there's something we can do.
Well, and it might be that, so for this year, I'll be flying, I'll be flying a motor, and it might be that we and in this journey, there'll be lots of variables to play with. So at the moment, I'm busy losing 3 stone because all the extra weight that I'm carrying on my body makes a big difference.
That's quite a lot. How many kilograms is that?
That's a lot, but you don't need to know how much weight to start with. Yeah, that's quite a lot. It's the weight of a paramotor, basically. I need to lose my body.
But I mean, I don't want to cast any aspersions as to your physical build, but you don't look overweight to me. You look very slim, but I don't know.
It's spread. It's well proportioned. Maybe that was why I could say that. But I that is definitely one of the easy ways I could help the technology is to lose a bit of weight.
Yeah.
But the second thing is the variables of the timing and days that you fly.
Yes.
So you're the thermals, flying a coastal route where there's onshore winds and a constant updraft. So areas where you could just paraglide, then you can fly motor off. So
if that would be a thing, I've not even thought of that. You could use an electric motor to get you up in the air. Yeah. But once you're up, you could probably fly for quite some time without it on.
Yes, you are just quite slowed by the fact that you've got a thermal up and then cruise, and then thermal up and then cruise. And when you're flying along the coast and there's constant updraft and you're in a direction, that is that is great. It only really works so well where there's cliffs. But there's different variables to play with, and also the speed and efficiency of the wing. So and what wind direction you've got. So if you've got a tiny bit of a headwind, you're almost better taking a smaller, faster, a bit less efficient wing because you're still making headway. Right. So I'll be playing with all those sorts of variables and what can we do with what we've got at the moment. There is the option of strapping on an extra battery, so I've got double the amount of time. Yeah. But that adds extra weight, which you have to land with as well. And when you're
when you're doing this, you're talking about landing on your feet.
Yeah. My knee's been fixed, so and there are it gives you a lot more options for landing if you take landing on your feet. Sand, little fields, whatever. You can run.
Because how long do you need? Like how much time do you spend running? I mean, in terms of distance, is it like 10 meters or 50 meters or? I suppose it depends on how you do it. But
you basically have to get a certain airspeed before you can get takeoff. And
now, I'm talking about landing though. I'm just sort of thinking when you're flying.
Again, it is connected to airspeed because if you have a headwind, you
you can be barely moving when you land.
Exactly.
Right.
If you've got no wind whatsoever, you're taking off and landing at speed. So you need to run to get a certain speed. If you've got a good headwind, you're pretty much just a few steps and then you're off.
Wow.
So and landing, And if you get it right, if you time it right, it can all be quite smooth. But anything, as soon as you add an extra, you get a bit of turbulence near the ground. If you've got an extra 15, 20 kilos on your back and a double battery pack, you are adding an extra element of stress on everything. So,
But when you're up in, because I think that's the thing, I'm imagining standing up with 15 or 20 kilos on my back, you would be very aware of it, even if it was nicely supported with straps. But when you're in the air, you're not aware of it, presumably. When you're actually flying,
and you're not aware if you're on the ground carrying that on your back. I mean, it's more than that. The paramotor with a full battery or fuel tank would be more than that. But as soon as the wing lifts up behind you, it by default lifts some of the weight of the paramotor off you. So, and then you're running. When you're running, you've got the engine helping you to give forward force. So, there's lots of variables at play.
Wow.
It makes complete sense when you've been flying for a while and you're kind of like dancing with this equipment that you've got. It's not as clunky as it sounds on the ground.
But I mean, I think the thing that we could certainly help you with, even if we didn't do anything directly, is, because presumably you have to have support vehicles that are going along with you. Well, I mean, they've got to be electric. Whatever, even if you're powered by petrol yourself, those have got to be electric now. So that's one part of it. But I mean, I actually think it's extremely plausible that we know enough people that could rig up a system whereby even as they're driving, they're charging whatever battery. You would have more than, you'd have 3 or 4 battery packs, and you'd be charging 2 of them while you're on the ground, while you've got one, and whatever it is, however you would do it. Because that is, I think you would notice a difference. That I think you would find that you could swap over. It wouldn't always work, but there would be times where you could literally land, stop, someone but comes up behind you, clicks in a new battery, and you can take off again in a matter of seconds. That's not impossible. I mean, that
would be the ideal, and I think that is doable if we just have separate spare battery packs. But the idea of having a car electric vehicle that can be charging at the level that is needed for it, that if you think that is possible, that would be magic.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm extremely confident that's possible. Yes. I mean, we know, thankfully, one of the advantages of being a bit thick is I know some clever people who can sort stuff like that out. Because I couldn't do it, but we know people that can.
The challenge we have is that we've got a media team, so we have got film and camera people.
Oh, fantastic!
In the team, but in the evenings, they need to have access to power to charge quite a lot of batteries as well. And so finding that without using a generator, whereas normally at camp we'd have a generator.
But then, I mean, that's the thing. There are now. It's a really good time to do it, and it really makes the point. There are enough charging points, and that's why you need. If you have electric vehicles that have big enough batteries, for one thing, they could charge all their camera equipment off the main battery of the vehicle, because it's, it would charge. That wouldn't be a problem. That's not a problem. The issue is making sure that you can charge the vehicles on the route, which you would be able to. I mean, it might be that they have to stop for an hour somewhere once a day, because they're not going to be covering that many miles in a day. I mean, I don't know how far you can go. What's the furthest you've ever been in a day in a paraglider? I mean, I can't imagine how far it is in
probably 500k I've been in, but that was on a day where I really had to make distance and flying constantly. And with a petrol motor, I can fly for about 3.5 hours as opposed to 50 minutes at a time. So it's a very different kettle of fish. But they wouldn't be going that far. If you think around the coast, we're certainly following a paraglider kind of route. We're looking at about 3,000 miles.
Something around that, isn't it? Yeah.
So obviously the vehicles would do a bit more with detours and things, but that over 6 weeks. They're not doing that every day.
Yes, no, they're not going to be doing that far. No. And that's very doable.
Plenty of time. And a big part of it is so everywhere, in as many places as possible, I'll try and stop and land where there's someone we can talk to that's got an idea or a solution.
Yes, brilliant. Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. No, that is so extraordinary. So then there's COP26 in Glasgow.
Yeah.
Because we're going to be there big time. I know that. I think we're organising a studio to do like interviews and stuff when we're there, and we're doing quite a lot of media coverage of that. But then after that, you told me about another journey that you're going to do, which is even longer.
It's not
It's before. Oh, sorry.
It's in line with the Osprey migration. So the Ospreys, they set off in August, and I couldn't arrange to get them to like shift that this year. So they're still going to head off in August.
So wait a minute, the Ospreys are flying from the British Isles.
Scotland, yep.
From Scotland.
And other places in the British Isles, yep. And they're heading towards West Africa. So they have to cross the Sahara. Wow. And so that journey again, there'll be a lot of really, really big kind of climate stories. Last year, lots of birds found, extreme weather across the Sahara, and that's only going to get more and more extreme. So we're telling that story. So I will, whilst I was intending to be in Glasgow for COP26, it's now feels like it's better for me to be live broadcasting in from West Africa, having shared the story all along the way. So we're trying to do a story in the run-up to COP26. So people are hearing about it. They're seeing real examples of it. It's not just about the one-off event. This is about, we're trying to tell the real life stories through other voices.
Right. Wow, that's a big challenge. I'm not going to suggest that you use, you could, but no, you couldn't. I'm not going to suggest you could use electric vehicles to go across the Sahara just yet.
Wouldn't it be amazing if you could, though? I've been watching The Long Way Up and seeing how charging points were pretty rapidly put in place. So well, we could suggest it.
Certainly Morocco is not a problem. I know there's a big electric car movement in Morocco, strangely enough, but it's quite, having been there once and sort of looked at roads and gone, it reminded me of Australia, this is big.
Yeah.
This is a big place and it goes on a long way. Yeah. But that'll be what an amazing adventure. So give me the date.
Hybrids. They need to be hybrids. So that's one thing I'd really love them to do, so that we have options. The dates, second week of August is intending to leave, and then
so that'll take about 6 weeks, that journey, is that right?
No, that will take longer. So we're intending to be in West Africa by COP26, so by November.
Right.
Which is about when the birds arrive. And then in Ghana we have an event with big companies that are managing land use in West Africa. So the intention is to talk to them all about how they can get involved. And
I'm sorry, and these birds, you did say what birds they are. Osprey.
Yeah, wow. the big fishy eagle. Yeah.
Wow, that is amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
Have you flown with them at all before? I don't know what that'll be like. Is it?
No, they are. So amongst the kind of birds of prey, they're particularly solitary.
Right.
So they will take off on their own. So even from a single nest, the females leave first, and then the biggest juvenile, and then the next juvenile, and then the males leave at the very end. So there could be weeks in between the female leaving and the male. Wow. And they will never have fed themselves before they head off on a migration, the juveniles. So they are completely learning. They've got an inbuilt sort of migration system.
Extraordinary.
Because they were generally extinct in big parts of Europe. The birds that are here or in Scotland now and are coming back are from Scandinavian populations. So their inbuilt migration has them thinking that they are starting from a point which is further to the east. So
right.
They do have a tendency to get blown off course and out to sea. So again, extreme weather conditions. Some years, I think 80 or something birds were predicted to have been blown offshore and drowned. So it will be a fascinating story again, but from a different point of view. So that's the key thing for me, is looking at the problems that we face from a completely different point of view, and from above, it just makes things make more sense, connecting climate to landscape and the natural world, how they're all connected.
Yeah.
I think we can tell that through lots of small stories in a way that people will want to hear.
Yes. God, it is extraordinary. I'm just completely blown away, because I think it's that thing where a world is revealed to you that you just had never, not contemplated. I've never even thought about it. I know that birds do migrating. I would have learnt that when I was like 8.
Exactly. And I tell you, this is the experience that I had from sitting with all these swan experts when they were telling me what was going wrong for the swans. And I had said many times before, because I was head of the comms department, the birds migrate from Arctic Russia. And I had never looked at a map and thought, what does that actually mean? Yeah. And I thought, oh my God, that's this landscape, this. Oh my God, they've got to face that as well. And that whole journey for me was a bit of an eye-opener, and I'm really keen to share it.
Yeah. The slight difference you've got with this one is it will be potentially warmish in August. You never know in this country.
Yeah.
But then it'll get much warmer as you go south, whereas before you were presumably in quite cold conditions.
Yeah, had some extreme cold. At altitude, it does get very cold anyway.
True, it does,
on the last trip, the coldest I got was above crossing the English Channel at 3,500 feet. Was minus 27, I think, with wind chill.
Oh my God.
With wind chill, but that was the coldest. So generally we're flying a lot lower than that. And on this, so there will be times at altitude, but with the heat comes more extreme turbulence crossing mountain ranges. So the Ospreys rely on thermaling and long cruises where the swans fly over flat ground normally. Right. So this will be more turbulent. I suppose the Sahara is going to be challenging, no doubt. Yeah. And there are times when the thermal updrafts are so strong that they don't die down as it gets into evening. So it can be actually quite hard to get down to the ground before dark, and you don't want to be landing or flying at all in the dark. So there will be different challenges, but the birds are facing exactly the same challenges. So that's going to be an eye opener.
But that alone is such a counterintuitive, fascinating notion that you're flying with a big parachute thing above you, and it's really hard to land, because you think my whole experience of flying is you're going to go down really quickly. That landing is like it's going to happen. Whereas if you're so you can get in a position where it's quite hard to kind of come down.
And in the UK, normally when there's thermals, the thermals are sort of discrete and they're not enormous. And anywhere where the air is going up on the sides of those, there's also air going down.
Right. Okay.
So as long as you get out of the thermal, then you can go down. And as it gets dark, the ground is cooling fast enough that air's going down.
Yeah.
Bits of even Spain and West Africa will definitely be areas where the thermals, where the land is heated up, the areas are so big that the thermals are enormous. So you would have to fly literally to a different region to find the air going down, and it's still going up quite fast. So it's a different thing, learning to read the land and see it from a different point of view.
I mean, I don't want to go on about it too long, although why not? Because it's fascinating. But could you fly like a conventional aircraft before you started flying? I mean, if you got a pilot's license or anything?
No, I can fly a microlight. But no, I started paragliding from only because I developed a fear of any kind of turbulence from a horrible flight in Panama in a small plane.
All right.
And we ended up in a thunderstorm properly, being sucked up, thrown out, churned up. He couldn't find the landing strip over lots of little islands. And we all thought we were going to die for about 40 minutes.
And this is a small plane.
All seats in the back, pilot and co-pilot in the front.
My God. And, small. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other planes that had taken off had all gone back to Panama. And our pilot just thought he could outrun it, and he couldn't. So we did eventually land, but that had been 40 minutes of the pilot was a local guy, so he was dark-skinned and he'd gone pale. Wow. When he did eventually find the landing strip, he got out and he lay flat on the ground. And, that was a big relief. But it left me with this ridiculous terror of any kind of turbulence.
I don't know. I don't think it's ridiculous. It's very understandable.
I mean, the behaviour would have looked ridiculous. It's like anybody who's got this awful fear of flying. Whereas people would look at me and go, "Okay, you compete at free diving, you ride motorcycles, you grew up in the Australian bush. Surely you're tough enough." And I'd get into a plane and a bit of taking off at Luton, bit of bump, and I'm like, "Oh no!"
All right.
Gripping the person next to me who was a complete stranger, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And I had to get over that. And I realized I needed to get the science part of my brain override this other kind of irrational one.
Yeah.
And I tried a few different types of aircraft. I tried gliders, and there was just too much information. And then I looked at a paraglider and thought, okay, I think I can learn to understand air if I can be in a paraglider and I can check every single line and every cell, and I can understand how it works. There's a pendulum and there's flight. And I hated it. I used to do lots of takeoffs and landings and short flights, and they were all quite terrifying. And I suffered it for probably 2 years doing that, but it was slowly helping. And then I started taking the odd little thermal to go up, and then, cruising along a ridge, and I started to enjoy it. And then I saw someone with a paramotor and thought, okay, with that, if I added that to the equation, I can fly at dawn and dusk when the air is completely calm. Beautiful light for photography if I want to get landscapes for conservation shots, and you can take it in the back of your car. So I could fly with an aircraft constantly in the back of my car.
Yes.
And so I basically, that desire to do that overrode all the kind of fear. And So yeah, I learned to fly with motors. But no, it didn't start from a desire to learn to fly at all. It was I needed to be able to get into an aircraft and not be a wreck.
Yeah. No, I can understand. I mean, I do understand that. I mean, because that is the peculiarity of my work, is that I ended up, I don't do it so much now, but going in all sorts of things. So from the world's biggest digger to a Red Bull aerobatic plane.
Okay.
And I understand that the extremes, I mean, and that was not in a storm, but it was very extreme. So I was unconscious for about a half the entire flight. I mean, I just, when he did the, when he turned it, I'd just be unconscious. So it was only after that I discovered, which is not a bad thing for a man of my age, I have low blood pressure rather than high blood pressure, which means you faint at about 2G for a moment. And we were pulling 6, 7 sometimes, so it was just like being knocked over the head. I was unconscious, I didn't know, but it was all on camera, which is a bit embarrassing. And then when I came round, I realized that it is possible to just use expletives with no joining words, because that's mainly what I was doing. But what I discovered then, and I've also discovered at sea on very rough seas and small boats, is I don't get travel sick, as in vomiting, which is quite unusual because most people vomit in Red Bull aerobatic planes the first time they go on, or jet fighters, that you vomit. Even if you're enjoying it, you'll throw up. I don't throw up. But that doesn't mean that you feel okay. And that was the thing that I'm so intrigued by, that which in modern passenger jets, it's very unusual. You get that feeling where you drop or you climb suddenly, and I've flown in gliders and in small aircraft, and I find both of those quite disturbing to deal with, but I've never done it so that I'm in control of it. So I'm holding 2 wires, and I know if I go like that and I pull them down, I will go up.
Yeah.
So you're like driving a car in a sense, where if you steer it that way, it will turn. That must be. I'm guessing that's different because it's always been done to me, that experience. Not under my control. So I do find that stuff. That's what's kind of put me off learning to fly more, because I actually love it.
Yeah.
Even in the Red Bull aerobatic plane. I'm going to tell you one thing. We were flying around the Isle of Wight, and he'd leveled up. South African from Zimbabwe. White Zimbabwean who had the very clipped accent like that. Are you going to be sick, Robert? He kept asking. I went, no, I'm not going to be sick. I'm going to, and then he'd go, meow, and I'd be out again, and my head would be wobbling about. Just fucking horrendous. But he leveled out, and he said, oh, you were like this. Look out to the left. And I looked out to the left, and a fucking Spitfire took up and came up level with us. So the equivalent of you with a bird flying next to you, there was a Spitfire, and I went, oh my God. And then I could hear the Spitfire even though we were at probably, 3,000 feet up, flying around the Isle of Wight. And they had been racing around the Isle of Wight. The Red Bull aerobatic plane had been racing the Spitfire. The Spitfire can fly 250 miles an hour faster than the Red Bull, but it can't turn. So when it got to a corner of the Isle of Wight, the Red Bull would just go like that, like a right angle turn in a quarter of a second, and the Spitfire would bank round, but it was a glorious moment. And then the guy in the pilot in the Spitfire did some sort of hand signal that we could see, and then he did that thing. I don't even know what it is, but where it turned right in front of us, and then of course I don't remember the rest because then we dived down behind him, and I was unconscious again. But for a glorious moment, that was spectacular. But sorry, we'll probably cut that because it's just me.
Were you aware, out of interest, were you aware of passing out?
No, I was aware of coming round.
Oh, right, but not that you...
But not... No, no, and it's when I watched the footage back, it's actually, some of it's on YouTube, it's very cruel. No, absolutely not. So I was blown away when it took off. The acceleration, you're in an aeroplane that's powered by a propeller that's chopping up wind. It felt like we were in a dragster with traction on the ground. It was just, the acceleration is staggering in those things. And he flew level and at about 10 feet for quite a long way. And there were some trees ahead. And I remember that very clearly, going, I hope he sort of goes over those trees. And he's sitting right behind me. I was thinking, can he see past my helmet? Can he see? There were bloody trees there. And then I don't remember what happened, but we had cameras outside. It basically was going along level and it went up. It just goes absolutely directly up. And now I don't remember any of that. I remember coming round and seeing a cow spinning in front of me, which made no sense, a black and white cow in a field, and we were diving down like that. And then I remember that briefly, and then he leveled out, and I was unconscious again. So I was unconscious for a lot of it, it is upsetting when you come round because you don't know where you are or what's going on, and your arms flail about. The way I got my revenge, because I think he was basically having a bit of fun, because he just had this English bloke in front of him swearing every now and then, but the rest of the time his head was just... but when we landed, I would classify him as healthily homophobic white man. And I got, the young people helped me out of the bloody cockpit. I could barely walk. And they filmed there's footage of this. And I gave him a hug genuinely to thank him for not killing me. I was so relieved to be back on the ground and not dead. It was wonderful. And I gave him a hug, and I actually put my hand on just above his buttocks and really pulled him in tight and gave him a very close man hug. And you could see his face. He was really uncomfortable. He really didn't enjoy that. So that's how I got my revenge. It was very memorable. I mean, I'm really glad I did it, because what an incredible privilege to have a go in somewhere. I mean, they're insane, those things. They're just bonkers how they do what they do. And the wings are tiny. It looks like an IKEA shelf sticking out. When you're in it, there's this little thing. It's like nothing. Oh my God, that's a wing. They're very, very small planes. I mean, they're really money. Anyway, but then, I just want to make sure that we can do, if we can help, we definitely will. But also, I would love to, to do an episode of Fully Charged, or whatever way we can work together to promote what you're doing, because it is really extraordinary and very important.
So, I mean, there's definitely, around Britain, I don't know if there are examples of people that you think that would be worth visiting, particularly in the kind of battery network. That would be exciting. The RAF had said, I think I mentioned this before you on the phone, if they could create a hydrogen-powered paramotor, could I kind of do that the following year? Wow, yeah. And obviously, yes, that would be great, even if this year is a bit slow and clunky and we're kind of demonstrating limitations. Yeah. And the next one, you can do it amazingly. That would be great. If there is a way of creating a program, we will have a crew who are filming for a broadcast. So maybe there's something there. I mean,
there's definitely, all the way around. I'm already thinking, Dundee is amazing, and you're going to go near it. There's so many things. So that whole area of the west coast of the east coast of Scotland has, I'm going to call them lochs. I'm sure they're not lochs, but in very large inlets, which have literally hundreds of oil rigs that have been towed in from the North Sea. I mean, the spectacle of them is extraordinary. And if you're flying over them, it would be the most extraordinary thing. It's because we've used all the oil. But the flip side of that would be a great way of, I don't know, the engineers, the technical skill that maintained the North Sea oil fleet has transferred to offshore wind in such a big way, including the maintenance ships and all the stuff, the peripheral stuff around oil extraction has very rapidly transferred to offshore wind and installing and maintaining offshore wind. But there's also Orkney, amazing stuff in Orkney, really spectacular renewable energy, hydrogen refueling for ships. I mean, incredible stuff there. But then Cornwall, there's places all around. There's a lot. Yeah, we've got a very good researcher that could.
There's hydrogen refueling on Orkney, is there?
They use excess wind, of which they have an enormous amount, to produce hydrogen, which they run the ferries when they're in docks, because the dock is right in the town, and they used to have their diesel engines running all the time. They now turn off the diesel engines, and they're powered by the hydrogen fuel cells on the shore, and they produce their hydrogen themselves. And there's a cost saving as well as environmental saving, which is always the way. Yeah. Because I'll tell you, whatever else, that's the thing that's worth working out, and would be easy to do, is the cost of your fuel to fly around the British Isles will be less. Yeah. If you use, I'm sure a paraglider motor does quite good fuel efficiency because it's a small engine, but it will still be cheaper to charge it by electricity, which would be quite an interesting.
Yeah. You mentioned a researcher. Is the researcher happy to share any of the?
Oh God, yeah. No, what it would be so important to get as many locations around the country that you could visit. Because I mean, I suppose it doesn't have to be like on the beach. If there's something amazing 10 miles inland, is that all right?
Yeah.
But it's sort of round the edge. We could.
I just have to tick off in order to get the Guinness World Record. I have to hit some waypoints around.
Right.
That's it. So the extremities, I have to hit.
Yeah. But I mean, even the Thames Array, I mean, do you know about the Thames Array? So in the Thames estuary, one of the biggest wind farms in the world. I mean, it's just mind-bogglingly huge. So south of Southend, sort of in between Southend and whatever is the other side in Kent. You can see it when you fly into the city airport. You sometimes catch a glimpse of it. But those are sort of landmarks rather than actual places you can visit.
But the aerial spectacle of that is a key part of it as well.
Yeah.
We capture what it looks like. What does it look like?
Because will you fly on your own, or will you have someone else in another
paramotor? There'll be somebody else. Yeah, his will be petrol powered, but yes.
Right. So he can film you basically. That's great. Wow. Just one last technical question, because when I watched you, I've seen some footage. I think that it was you. You were using both hands to control the steering.
Yeah.
But how do you then operate a camera? Or do you need to be doing that all the time, or can you?
No, thankfully. No, and you can do this. Take both in the same hand.
All right.
Do this to some extent. You can also steer a lot with weight shift. So
right.
Obviously shifting to the right is like pulling to the right. It's a bit more subtle and smooth. But if it's really turbulent and you also use the brakes whilst they're steering, they're also used if you're in turbulent air. You can use, if you get a slight collapse in one wing, you can pump on that to force air back into the wing, keep it have a solid structure. So if it's turbulent, you need to be
on the case. I just don't want to hear things like if you lose one wing, I don't want to hear things like that. If you lose one wing, it's just that's too much information.
Oh, really? I mean, seriously, if you can basically pull in pretty much 3/4 of the wing and you keep going in a straight line. Wow. The way that they are now. So as long as you're weighted correctly and everything, they are pretty capable. And the nice thing about the paramotor is that you have a spare in your pocket. So there's a parachute. If it all goes wrong, you throw the parachute in your pocket. So
I didn't know that. You actually have a parachute with you.
Yeah, as well. Yeah. That is not your parachute,
Wow. Right. Yeah. It's a separate parachute type thing, yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh
so it's all
It is spectacularly amazing what you're doing. I'm just completely in awe, and I think it's fantastic. And I mean, the thing is, it would be amazing even if it had nothing to do with birds or migration or climate change or anything. The fact that is the motivating factor. That you weren't like a hobby pilot that went, I'll follow a swan. It was the other way around. The swan made you learn to do that. It's extraordinary. Yeah,
there's no way you would take on that amount of effort and stress and strain and everything if it wasn't for something that felt really big.
Yes, I absolutely appreciate that. And then just quickly tell me, because that is so devastating, because my wife is Australian, so we've spent a lot of time there. Okay. In fact, a property that I was never going to buy, but I looked at 2 years ago in northern New South Wales, is no longer in existence. So I'm quite glad I didn't buy it. It went up in the fires. But you lost. So did you? That's so heartbreaking. We know 2 other people who've lost their homes in Australia. That is horrific. And had it been a long time home, was it?
Yeah, since I was 8.
Oh.
Yeah, it was the house that we built over time. So it was in wood and it was in the middle of the bush. And I used to get mum to constantly record like audio calls of the birds around there. I mean, it's like I've got one of my bedrooms in my house is themed around that place. Like we used to have, the one main room had a loft in it. So as kids, we first slept in the loft and then we built another outbuilding for us. But it's been there that long. And in sort of December the year before last, we helped my mum. Her husband had died just previously. We helped her pump 120,000 litres of water into 3 big water tanks to defend the house.
Wow.
And then had to sit and watch the fire. This was in the very southeast, the border with Victoria. Had to watch this fire front appearing or approaching, and online look at the fact that it was 40 kilometres long and 11 kilometres high, meeting up with the thunderclouds. And it was sort of projecting fire in front of it because it was creating its own lightning storms. And I just had to kind of have the conversation with Mum and say, we're not gonna be here. We can't fight this. I don't want you anywhere near here either. So every other house in the same area, it came through at speed. It was incredibly hot. It melted the gold and silver off the cutlery. Had no silver on it. Mum's gold that she left behind, that has just vanished. So it was over 1,000 degrees. It was
Jesus Christ. And I mean, I think the point I want to make with that is that, you know, I've been in Australia when there's been bushfires, and in comparison with what happened that time, they were like a garden bonfire. They were nothing. You know, they were very, very limited, very small. That was so gargantuanly horrific. And I think, I mean, do you think it affected the public opinion in Australia that it might be, because I've experienced climate change denial to a level that I didn't know was possible in Australia, you know, amongst friends and relatives. I think it must have had an impact to people going, wait a minute, this is a bit different. I mean, that was so
definitely
huge.
I mean, I would completely agree with you. The climate change denial was people's ability for it is huge, particularly Australian kind of pride in being able to cope with extremes.
Yeah.
That managed to sort of override their kind of looking at it and going, actually, this is probably bigger than that. And then even when it was approaching, for me, there was a couple of key things. And my mum had been in the bushfire brigade with her partner again for years. She used to drive the fire truck. So they'd fought bushfires before and had to again go like, this is nothing like it.
Right.
But it took things like the head of the local fire brigade, well respected amongst all the community, when he started to say to people, don't be there. Just don't be anywhere near there. This is not like anything you've seen before. That's when people started to go, oh, really? And afterwards, the community is definitely pulled together. But, you know, when you think at Malakuta, which is just, you know, the same fire front basically hit Malakuta, where 4,000 people walked into the water because the fire brigade could not keep it away. There's nothing like that, where moments like that create complete change in your psyche. And I'd say it's changed the community as well, made it more caring. But,
I think what is amazing, which I can't really comprehend, is there was an area we went to when my children were very small. We went past, which had been burnt out, which was, you know, I was shocked to see it, like an area of woodland where it's just black stumps of trees. You know, it had happened a few weeks before we were there. And then we went along the same road like 4 years later, and it was bloody green and it was growing. And I went, how, you know, there's nothing like that in this part of the world. You know, if there's, you know, it just doesn't happen. So, I mean, I don't know. Do you know if the area around there has recovered? It is just extraordinary how that can possibly happen.
And again, from previous bushfires, it actually looks quite spectacular. You know, when the first rain happens, the Australian bush is kind of meant, you know, it's kind of, a lot of plants need smoke, even seeds will need smoke in order to be able to degenerate. So actually the Australian landscape has a history of fire. And, you know, you can go back a couple of months later after a big rain and find that, you know, stuff is springing to life.
Right.
After something on this sort of scale, though, so at Mum's, there have been some heavy rains now, and the bush is kind of springing back to life now with greenery, but it looks very odd because it's killed like tops of trees. So, for example, the gum trees that are normally big stalks and green on top, they're growing like sprouts out of all of their trunk.
Wow.
Lots of the big old trees completely died. I mean, I don't know if that's about the kind of the amount of wood there is in the core of it got so hot, but the big old trees have gone.
Right.
And there is like wildlife took a very long time. There's still very little. Mum's seen like one goanna at the moment when there would have been, you know, tens around normally. Yeah. Birds, there are some now, but for a long time there was pretty much only mosquitoes, not even flies.
Wow.
So this was even on the wildlife scale, on a different scale, but yes, greenery is coming back. It looks different, but my mum has just opted to move back there and have a very simple life. She wasn't insured, so she doesn't have a house. She has a caravan.
Wow.
But she wants to be there to watch how it changes.
Watch it recover,
and to see.
And can I ask what age she is? I mean, that's a pretty brave thing to do.
70.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, but she's opting. She's saying she's suited to the simple life.
I'm used to. I don't want to be misogynistic or Australianist, but having lived for the last 32 years with an Aussie girl, that when my wife was 2 days before she gave birth, and it's definitely a kind of biological, deep-seated nesting instinct, she started digging up blackberry bushes in the back garden and like ripping out roots out of the ground. And I kept looking at her going, what are you doing? I don't like these. And she was massively pregnant at the time, but she was kind of nesting, but like a kind of wild hyena or something. I don't know. It was just terrifying to watch. I did not argue. I learnt by then, don't argue with a woman who's this pregnant.
Well, mum has definitely got that. She's actually Swiss, but has lived out in Australia since she was quite young, since she was in her 20s, early 20s. So
it is tough out there, because I think that I love that contrast in Australia, that you can live the most delightfully lazy suburban life in Australia, with lovely supermarkets just down the road and a nice big ute, and you could be almost completely oblivious of the scale of the country you live in. You can live in your little suburban bubble, or you go out in the bush. The first time someone from Northern Europe goes there, you just cannot help but be affected. I drove from Brisbane to Alice Springs the first year I was in Australia in a Land Cruiser. I mean, I stopped. I didn't do it in one go, but and I did it on my own. It was an amazing thing to do. I mean, just extraordinary. Wasn't my Land Cruiser, luckily.
Right. Did people stop you and ask you whether you knew what you were doing, and did you have enough fuel and enough water and stuff like that?
I got huge amount of instructions beforehand, and then I drove an army, a 4-wheel drive, ex-army truck belonging to the Pitjantjatjara Women's Association that had been serviced in Alice Springs and needed to be returned to Uluru, and they were looking for someone to drive it, and I went, I could, I just happened to be there that day. So then I drove a vehicle that would do 45 miles an hour flat out. So you imagine how long that took. Yeah,
bumpy, I bet.
Quite bumpy and quite long. But I was under very, very strict instructions with that vehicle not to stop.
And not to the air conditioning, because that also
no air conditioning. It had flaps underneath like a Land Rover, So and that was like when you opened those, I had them shut, because if you opened them, it was like you'd said something rude to a gay hairdresser and he had 10 hairdryers pointing in your face because he was angry with you. It was unbearable. It was like really, really hot wind blowing at you. It was just unbearable. No, that was just the most ridiculous drive ever, but it was really phenomenal. I've still got prints of photographs which are basically don't look like photographs. It's blue, red with a black bit in the middle, which is the road. There's nothing. There's just, that's blue, that's red, that one is black, and the rest of it is this extraordinary blue colour that I've never seen anywhere else. And the stars at night when I stepped out. So I'm very jealous of your childhood. Must have been absolutely amazing to grow up in that area.
Freedom.
Yeah. Anyway, we have waffled for, I don't dread to think how long. Oh my God! Oh, I'm so sorry.
Who gets to edit this? This is
Ben. He's very patient.
Lucky Ben. Yeah, good.
But no, that's great. I will stop that. Well, thank you so much. Anyway, that is just brilliant. And I'm very Well, I really hope you enjoyed that episode. It was amazing to meet Sacha. We're going to try and film some stuff with her electrically powered paraglider later this year, if we're allowed to, and if everything continues to improve, as it is now. Anyway, that's all for this week. Obviously, I'd love you to subscribe to Fully Charged. I'd love you to, if you don't know about the Fully Charged Show on YouTube, I'd love you to look that up, Fully Charged Show, youtube.com/Fully Charged Show, and have a look at our Patreon link that is often in the show notes of these podcasts, or whatever you listen to. Please tell your friends and family about the Fully Charged Show podcast. It's becoming extraordinarily popular, and we're very proud of what it's doing, which is fantastic. Spreading the word. Anyway, that's all. As always, if you have been, thank you for listening.